So it's looking increasingly likely that we're going to have a general election. There's a vote that's going to happen today that aims to bring some parties together. It's a cross-party motion to block a no-deal Brexit in Parliament, and if that passes, the rumour is that Boris Johnson is going to call a general election for the 14th of October. For me, not the best outcome, not the best idea, because it just passes the poison chalice onto Labour or onto somebody else if Boris Johnson is voted out. But I will still vote Labour out of loyalty and out of just getting rid of the Tories, because they've been in power for nearly 10 years and this is the mess they've created. From my personal opinion, Labour should wait. They should. I actually almost vomited yesterday when I realised that Tony Blair was actually making a bit of sense when he said that Labour should actually vote down a motion for a general election, because I honestly believe they should make the Tories own this mess. The Tories called the referendum. They didn't specify what a Leave vote would mean. In fact, the Leave campaign made conflicting statements where they said that there would be a deal. They said that they would still be in the free market if we left the EU, and then they said the opposite. So there was no real specification, and they called it. It all went to pot, and this is the mess we're in now. I think the Tories should be made to own that mess, and then once that mess is done and dealt with, once Brexit is finished, then we can have a general election, then we can get Labour in and pick up the pieces. That's my personal opinion, but if there is an election, I will vote Labour, and I believe that this general election is potentially only being called so Boris Johnson can pass the blame. He wants to pass the buck onto Parliament. So when it all collapses, he can just say, well, look, Parliament did this is their mess. They did it. They're the ones that stopped me, having a no deal. They're the ones who stopped me pulling out without any sort of framework in place. As I've said before, you wouldn't leave a 40-year marriage without any sort of agreement, any sort of resolution set down as to who gets what, who gets access and benefits to what, this, that and the other, who gets the kids, who gets the house and the car. You wouldn't do it. So why these people are somehow angling for no deal when it isn't what we voted for when we voted to leave the European Union, because there was only two options, leave and remain. People voted to leave, and there were conflicting statements from the Leave campaign, and indeed there still are conflicting statements from the Leave campaign as to what leaving actually entails. What's left? So you've now got a cabinet full of leavers: Jacob Rees-Mogg, Priti Patel, Sajid Javid, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was actually the co-leader of the Leave EU campaign, and they are now refusing to release the details of Operation Yellowhammer. They claim they've carried out research and they know it's going to be fine and dandy after Brexit, but they won't release the details. Why won't they release it? Because actually it says that things are going to be pretty bad, in my opinion, and they don't want to release it because while Theresa May's experts and Theresa May's committees and meetings and stuff produced reports that said this is going to negatively affect the country, they could just say, oh well, it's just Remainer propaganda, it's just a Remainer bias because we've got a Remainer Prime Minister. That's why we got these negative reports coming out. Well, they can't say that now because they've got a Leave cabinet. They've got a hard right Leave cabinet, and if that hard right Leave government releases documentation and actual evidence that says Brexit is going to be negative, they have to own that. And this is all about the Brexiteers not wanting to own what they've created. This is why Boris Johnson is calling a general election, or potentially calling a general election, so he can pass the poison chalice. And this is why I don't support at this moment a general election. It's not the best idea. I think Labour need to wait it out. We've waited 10 years. We can wait a little while longer until a better time for an election. But if there is one, I will vote Labour. I'm no shame in saying that. I feel no sort of shame or anything like that at all in saying that. I will proudly vote Labour. I will vote out this government of tax cuts for the rich while welfare cuts for the poor. I will gladly vote them out and get in a government that's actually going to invest in social programs, actually going to invest in the police, invest in the NHS and the fire service, potentially defund nuclear warheads, which for some reason take priority over helping out the poor, homeless and vulnerable. I will gladly vote in a government that wants to do that. And of course, if Labour do get in, what happens then? Well, we need to hold Labour to account. We need to make sure that they actually deliver what they promised, and actually do what they said they were going to do, and pull through. And if they don't, we need to scrutinise, we need to criticise. I don't want to see a Labour government getting in, and then all the people that have been cheerleading for Corbyn over the last 3 years, because there does seem to be this fan base around Corbyn that pretty much won't take any criticism of him. I don't think he's perfect, but I think he's far, far better than Boris Johnson or most of the Tories as a potential Prime Minister. I think he's far better, but he's not perfect. And there seems to be this ring of around Corbyn of you can't criticise him, you're not allowed to say anything against him because that somehow makes you a Tory sympathiser. I've been called a Tory sympathiser for actually criticising Jeremy Corbyn on a couple of occasions. His Brexit position is very, very weak. This is why he needs to avoid inheriting that poison chalice and inheriting the problem with Brexit. It's not a Labour mess. It's not a Labour mess. He is a lifelong Eurosceptic in a party of Remain, and of course if you're running a party, if you're the leader of a party, and the party's position or the majority of the party's position goes against your own personal belief, you have to change and you have to adopt and then present their belief on their behalf. That's how democracy works. A party is not a theocracy, that's the wrong word, isn't it? It's not a plutocracy where one person or a small group of people rule the roost. It's a democracy. This is the system we live in. And of course he's having trouble trying to juggle his own sort of personal beliefs and the beliefs of the party, and he's having trouble trying to present it as a valid stance, when of course everybody knows historically he's been Eurosceptic. So that's all. There may be a general election. I don't know which way I'm voting. Do you, if it does happen. But I don't think it's the best thing to happen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.